Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. And Sap, the playoffs are finally here, so we have so much to talk about. First, we got to get the play-in underway, and we're going to talk all about the play-in tournament games that are happening tonight. But first, Sap, because we haven't had the opportunity to do it, we got to do a postmortem on your Los Angeles Lakers. I know you're dreading it, but it's going to happen. We're going to do it right now. And as of today, they are searching for a new head coach, as Frank Vogel was the official scapegoat of the 2021-2022 season. He no longer has a job as they got rid of him, or informed him they were getting rid of him yesterday. And so now they begin looking for a coach. But I think you and I both know, and everybody with a brain knows, that the Lakers' problems went far beyond Frank Vogel this season. So, Sap, as our resident Lakers and LeBron expert, what went wrong? Let's start with what went wrong this season for the Lakers.
Jed, I don't think we have enough time to do that.
Maybe
it seems
not.
like
I don't know.
Everything went wrong. And Frank Vogel found out he was getting fired more likely from a Woj tweet on Sunday night, which is disgraceful for the Lakers to do it that way. You know, you should have let him know before that came out that he was going to lose his job. At least show some respect for the man. He did coach you to an NBA championship 2 seasons ago. Apparently, other coaches in the league are infuriated by the way that Lakers handle that, and that's not a good thing. But the roster construction was god-awful. LeBron wasn't healthy enough this season to have that impact. He can still go out and put up 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists a game and still be one of the 5 best players in the world, but doesn't seem to impact winning. Anthony Davis misses 45% of the games, especially the last 2 years. He's just not a durable guy. And the Westbrook experiment was a complete disaster. And then you went out and signed all these players, and it felt like they had the deepest team in the league, but they weren't able to construct a real rotation. You don't need 14 players. You need 8 or 9 and build a real rotation and get some chemistry and play defense and do all those things you need to win. I mean, this Laker team played no defense, was a poor free throw shooting team, was a poor 3-point shooting team, turned the ball over too much. Other than that, they were spectacular. And that's why they didn't even make the play-in tournament. The 11th best team in the Western Conference. And over the last 2 months, Jet, it almost felt like they were tanking. I mean, they were right there with Portland as the worst team in basketball. I mean, you go back to the middle of January, the Lakers and Celtics were about even. In fact, the Lakers had a slightly better record at that point. Well, the Celtics finished the season going 33-10 from the midpoint in January. They were right there with Phoenix as the best team in basketball. And the Lakers were as bad as Portland, Detroit, Houston, all of these poor teams. It was just a total disaster. But it starts from the top going down, not just Frank Vogel. I think it really starts with ownership. And I just want to say one other thing, Jet. The last 9 years, the Lakers have arguably been the worst team in basketball. Yes, they won the championship a couple years ago. The last 9 years, they've only made the playoffs twice. They're at about 41% winning percentage. 7 times they missed the playoffs. One of the times they made the playoffs, they were one and done. That was last year against Phoenix. The other time they did win the title in the bubble. And that includes 4 years with LeBron James and 3 years with Kobe Bryant. Let's not forget Kobe's last 3 years with the Lakers. They averaged 22 wins per year. So they weren't good then. Then they were below mediocre. They were pretty poor for 2 years. Sign LeBron. He gets hurt midway through his first year. They don't quite get the traction that you would expect. Then they get Anthony Davis, win a championship, and then the last 2 years have been a disaster. So the last 9 years, they've been right there as one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in basketball, but they do have that one championship, which is number 17, which equals the Celtics. But the Celtics are much closer to winning number 18 than the Lakers are right now, because I don't even know what the Lakers' future is. That's the frustrating part. It's not like, okay, let's bring the gang back together next year. They'll be healthier. They'll play better. This team is damn old. They don't have a coach. And again, I look at it from Jeanie Buss heading on down. They're just not a well-run organization. I mean, who's in charge here? We all kind of joke that it's LeBron James, but is it Jeanie Buss?
Linda Rambis.
Linda Rambis? Is it Kurt Rambis? Is it Phil Jackson who has his hands involved now? Is it Rob Pelinka, who's technically the general manager? Are former players involved? I mean, it's just this big mess that they're in, and I don't know how they get out of it.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Sap, and it's all sort of accurate. And this goes to sort of what we've talked about before, is that it's not a well-run organization, and it hasn't been for quite some time. And it's remarkable, and I'm glad you pointed that out, how poor the team has been, with the exception of the one championship year, which is like, it's so strange. You're like, yeah, they've been awful. They've been one of the worst teams. They did win a championship. It's like, how? But they did. I mean, it's just go look in the record books. You can't take it away from them. The thing that I find, really, really interesting about the way the Lakers sort of operate, Sap, and it's something you've talked about before, is like they operate, they're cheap, which is bizarre because they have by far the biggest brand in basketball. And I know Celtics fans, I'm one of them, hate to admit that. And I'm sure Knicks fans don't like to admit that either. It's true. It's not even close. The Lakers social media, Sap, has more followers than any NFL team, and it's not close. So they have by far the biggest brand. They jersey sales, they're raking in crazy amount of money, and yet they operate like a team that, one, doesn't know what they're doing, and two, cheap. It's very strange. But sort of speaking to this season specifically, Sap, we at the beginning of the year, I'm trying to remember correctly, I was high on the Lakers, and I thought that they had a good. Okay, so you were too. So I'm trying to. I think we should sort of talk about what we had wrong, and I'll start, Sap, because I think we got to be honest on this show too. We're not gonna just sweep it under the rug or delete a tweet like LeBron James, who said, keep that same energy when at the end of the season. About guys, suspiciously, he deleted that tweet, but. I'm glad to do a mea culpa and own up to the fact that I thought this was going to be a good team. And here's what I got wrong, Sap, and I'm curious to see what your take is on it. What I thought was going to happen was LeBron and Anthony Davis would concurrently miss a lot of time, and Westbrook would basically have the team to himself and keep them afloat to like a 7 or a 6 seed during the regular season. And I thought that was what was going to happen. Something similar to kind of like his last year on the Thunder, where he was like a one-man band, and that he kind of elevated the team around him just by himself, because I don't think he could play with other stars. So I thought that was going to happen, is that the Lakers, either by rest or by virtue of age and Anthony Davis not being durable, those two guys would miss time at the same time, and it would be Westbrook's team in the regular season. But by the time the postseason rolled around, he had enough of his confidence and sea legs under them. LeBron and Anthony Davis would be healthy, and they would be able to roll into the postseason. I never thought they were going to be the 1 seed or anything like that. I thought they'd be a mid seed and do well in the postseason. So what I got wrong was the fact that LeBron and Anthony Davis almost staggered with each other when they were out, and Westbrook was healthy basically the whole season, as he always is, to his credit. And so Westbrook never got that opportunity, which, I mean, I guess you shouldn't really count on, to have it be just his show, and him working with just Anthony Davis or him working with just LeBron just didn't work. And so that's what I think I got wrong. Was I was anticipating that those guys would miss their star players, their best 2 players would miss time at the same time instead of staggered, which is what it was. And I think that really hurt the team.
Yeah, and also the fact that, LeBron and Russell Westbrook can be good friends, get along personally off the court, but on the court, it doesn't mesh. They're both ball dominant. You can't have 2 ball dominant players. And again, they didn't surround either with competent shooting. LeBron's always needed competent shooting. That's when he's at his best, because now he can dribble, penetrate, go to the basket, which he's still phenomenal at. I mean, the man almost led the league in scoring this year, but then he can kick out to some open shooters. Well, they don't have really good shooters. And then even players like Kendrick Nunn never played, and Wayne Ellington. I mean, it was just like, there was no consistency. Like one moment you'd look and say, well, this guy's playing really well, Austin Reeves, but come on, if Austin Reeves or Stanley Johnson are getting major minutes and they're both in the starting lineup, that's like a G League team. I don't care how great LeBron is or Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook.
Again, Austin Reeves undrafted, and Stanley Johnson was on the street.
Right. And you're expecting these guys to start. And Dwight Howard is finished, and Carmelo can still score, but he's best being a 7th or 8th guy to give you some juice now and then. It just never worked out, and it just continued to go bad. Just never got headed in the right direction. I mean, heck, they were over 500 right near the All-Star break. They looked like they could be the 6 or 7 seed, like you said, Jet, maybe get things right for the playoffs. But then it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where, they weren't able to beat the likes of San Antonio or OKC or anybody to even sneak into the play-in tournament. And now they have to get a new coach. And again, as you said, the Lakers can be notoriously cheap. They kind of cheaped out and hired Frank Vogel. I mean, I think most people thought Ty Lue was going to be the next coach of the Lakers after Luke Walton was shown the door. And instead they gave it to Frank Vogel because they got him cheaper. And that's what the Lakers do. It's, you think of this massive brand, which they are, but it doesn't always seem like they're doing the right thing. When it comes to the support staff, the players, look, you've got a salary cap. You pay your stars a lot of money. They make a ton of money on their cable deal, selling tickets. I mean, it's the biggest brand in the NBA, but those other costs where you can pay whatever you want for a head coach, they cheaped out on. And not that Frank Vogel's not a good coach, but Ty Lue's a better coach, who had the history with LeBron James winning a championship in Cleveland, but they decided to go Frank Vogel because he was cheaper. Now we'll see what happens. I mean, we're hearing all sorts of names out there. If Philly is one and done in the Eastern Conference playoffs, maybe Doc Rivers goes back to LA this time as the Lakers head coach. We hear, the Lakers may reach out to Brad Stevens, who's running the Celtics. I mean, is Coach K far behind? I mean, He was talked about being the Laker coach, 15, 20 years ago. Maybe he gets antsy and wants to coach in the NBA. Who the hell knows? But it's not a real appealing job. It is the LA Lakers, yes, but they have no draft capital, and you've got aging superstars. And look, if things work out, LeBron's going to get credit. If it doesn't work out, you're going to get blamed. Who the hell wants that unless they pay you, and they don't pay you?
It's sort of, you hit the nail on the head there, Sap. I mean, it is remarkable that that's the situation. If it works out, LeBron gets credit. If it doesn't, sure, you get blamed. I mean, in fairness, that's sort of how any sport works with the star player, and especially when you're a star player, the level of LeBron James. The team was never going to lay blame at the feet of LeBron James. And, now he's doing the whole, they're doing their exit interviews, and to their credit, they all showed up. And LeBron is saying, in terms of personnel decisions, I leave that up to the team. They can do whatever they want. No one believes that, obviously, and no one's they're not making a single move without his approval. So it's funny to me, Sap. Do you remember when Jeannie Buss took back over this team and from her brother, who seemed like a buffoon?
Yep.
Has it gotten any better? I mean, they lured LeBron James there, but why she was coming in and basically threw her brother under the bus and trashed him and said he doesn't know what he's doing. Does she know what she's doing?
No, probably not. I mean, she had the relationship with Phil Jackson, who won 5 championships there. But again, he had Kobe and Shaq for 3 of them, and Kobe and Gasol for 2 of them. So that helps. It doesn't appear that she knows what she's doing. She trusts Linda Rambis, who's Kurt Rambis's wife, as a trusted confidant. Again, there's just too many people involved here to really run an organization. You have the owner, they appoint someone to be, president of basketball operations. That person hires a general manager, scouting department, coach, and you kind of work together and try to build something. They can't build anything. I mean, they've always kind of fallen ass backwards into stars, right? Because it's Los Angeles. Players want to play there.
Or they had Jerry West, who's a legitimate genius.
One of the greatest executives in the history of the sport. Yeah, and he's the guy you pushed out. The guy who is, one of the best, if not the best executives in the history of the sport. You decide to move on from him and bring in other people that, can't measure up to him. So it is a disaster there. Look, what are they going to do with Russell Westbrook? Who wants him? I mean, could you possibly look and say, call up the New York Knicks and it's Westbrook for Julius Randle? I mean, because Randle played in LA and Westbrook could go to New York. But Westbrook's not even close to the player he used to be. It's not like he's going to make them a contender, and he's not even an exciting player anymore. He's talking about a guy who averaged 18, 8, and 8. A disaster. I mean, inefficient, can't play defense, has trouble at the basket. I think he hits 65% of his dunks, which is just that's as bad as being in the dunk contest. I mean, so he's a player who's certainly more on the back nine. He's staring at the clubhouse. And then you got to put up with him for $47 million. And he's one of the least self-aware athletes I've ever seen. He doesn't think there's an issue.
His exit interview was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
It blamed all the blame at the feet of Frank Vogel, who I feel bad for. He's getting just absolutely crapped on. And I don't care who, if it was the ghost of Red Auerbach coaching this team, Sap, that no one was succeeding with this pile of crap that the Lakers put on there. So it wasn't Frank Vogel's fault. And I thought he was professional throughout the whole thing. And Westbrook is saying, I don't know why he didn't like me or didn't trust me. Well, maybe because you didn't listen to the guy at all. There's all these reports saying, hey, let's try to run a fast break offense. Give me, we have all these guys who are great ball handlers. Let's get out there and run. Russell Westbrook apparently said, no, I'm the point guard. Give me the ball. No fast breaking. Just give me the ball. I'll bring the ball up the court. All right, Russell Westbrook, go stand in the corner, set screens. No, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand at the top of the key and dribble it for 20 seconds. Of course, Frank Vogel didn't trust you because he wasn't listening to him. And so I don't know, one, why a team would want to take on Westbrook at this point. because of the diminishing skills, the salary, and he doesn't seem self-aware at all, as you mentioned, Sap. And two, I think that there's a degree in the NBA of why are we going to do the Lakers a favor right now?
Right.
I don't think they have a good relationship with other teams. And
No.
I don't think Rob Pelinka has any relationship with any of the other, executives that they would be like, oh yeah, hey Rob, you're a good friend of mine. Like he's a weird guy, right? Like he does like he's like a uber religious guy, and he was the former agent who people don't always like, and he's like kind of got that LA lifestyle. His claim to fame was he was Kobe Bryant's agent. So like, well, I don't know that there's any team that'd be like, hey, yeah, Lakers, we'll do you a solid. We'll take on Westbrook's contract, and down the line, we have a good relationship with you. We'll feel like it'll get made back up in time. Who's going to do that for the Lakers?
Yeah, no one. And what exactly do you do in terms of roster? I mean, do you trade Anthony Davis? His value's gone down, but I'm sure you could still get a lot for him, provided he shows up in shape and is healthy. Could still be a top 10 player. Hasn't shown that the last 2 years because he's not in great shape and he's certainly not durable. But do you trade him? And what do you get back from? A lot of draft picks. And then you look at LeBron James and say, you're going to be 38 next year, but we got a lot of draft picks and he's going to be disinterested. I mean, do you talk to LeBron and say, LeBron, do you want to go somewhere else? We'll trade you. I mean, look, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got traded from Milwaukee to LA. So any player in the history of basketball can get traded. Maybe that's what LeBron's looking at. And we said this almost 4 years ago when LeBron went to LA. He went there for business reasons. He did win a title, which is great. His fourth title, and that's a great accomplishment. But he went there for business reasons, lifestyle, being able to be close to a lot of movie executives, communications executives, music industry, whatever. Is he going to be interested in going elsewhere? With going into his 38th year, not as a player, but as a human. And who knows? I mean, and some teams may say, as great as he is he worth the trouble? I think he still is. But then in 2 years, you're going to be looking at, well, he wants us to bring his son on. Can his son even play in the league? So there's a lot going on there. I don't know how they get out of this. Maybe they try to trade Anthony Davis, get some players in return, or they just say to LeBron and Anthony Davis, look, get healthy.
Make it work.
Make it work. I mean, because you do think if LeBron and Anthony Davis are both healthy, that they have a chance, but you got to surround them with shooters, not with guys that can't shoot like Russell Westbrook. I mean, Buddy Hield would have been a good addition as a pure shooter, and DeMar DeRozan certainly would have been a lot better than Russell Westbrook. Or they just could have kept Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and KCP instead of trading them for Russell Westbrook. I mean, two of those three guys were pretty key guys on a championship team, so why not run it back? But LeBron got probably bored playing with them and decided, well, let's go get Russell Westbrook. This might work, and it didn't.
Yeah, and it's the situation too where, okay, let's try to fix the team, but we're hard capped now because of with the contract to LeBron and Anthony Davis and Westbrook. So they don't have the ability to bring in free agents. The only way they can do it is signing them to veterans minimum deals. Right. I don't know off the top of my head what shooters are on veterans minimum deals, but most of these shooters are going for a premium price, Sap. I mean, look at the contracts that Duncan Robinson got. Like, they're not going to just say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go play with the Lakers and make make $3 million this year," when they could make $18 million.
Sure.
So, okay, how do they trade for one? Well, their best trade chip is probably Anthony Davis now. Do they want to give him up just for pure shooting? Does that make the team better? No, I don't think so. And I think obviously, and you've talked about this a lot before, Sap, a lot of this blame needs to be at the feet of Anthony Davis for why can't the guy stay healthy? He's not snake bit with injuries. I think he just doesn't take it seriously.
Yeah, he could be accident prone. That term that they would use for kids. They're, sure. Sometimes you fall and you just fall in the wrong place.
But how many years in a row are you accident prone?
But it's been like that since he's come into the league. He was never durable. He was durable the year they won the championship. And again, I'm a LeBron guy, but that nice 3.5 month break helped LeBron and Anthony Davis. They were able to recharge their batteries. So they went into the bubble. They were healthy, rested, and they were clearly the best team in the bubble. It wasn't even close. They only lost 4 games in the playoffs. They went 16-4. That's a pretty dominant run. But yeah, I don't know if he's taking conditioning seriously enough, or maybe the fact that, he grew into his body late and he's kind of maybe uncoordinated, although he doesn't appear to be that because he's, a very effective player. It just hasn't worked out. And it's just, I don't know how they get out of this other than, if they can maneuver salaries and go after another free agent, but how the hell is that going to happen? And not all the free agents want to go there. I mean, Paul George didn't want to go there. Kawhi didn't want to go there. I'm sure DeRozan wanted to go there and they could have afforded him. That's where they would have been better off. But DeRozan becomes this guy who people don't think of as a valuable player, and he's probably going to finish in the top 10 in terms of MVP voting, right? And because he's a mid-range guy, he's not a great three-point shooter. Well, you know what? Give me a good mid-range guy over a terrible three-point shooter every day of the week. We need buckets. It doesn't have to be aesthetically pleasing. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to, well, they're not going to restructure their front office because, again, Jeannie Buss is friends with Kurt Rambis, Linda Rambis. We'll see what Pelinka does.
It's incestuous.
Very incestuous. That's perfect. It's kind of like the Cowboys too. I mean, there's Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, his two other kids. It's the same people in the organization. It's like a big business that you think is a big business, but it's more mom and pop.
But you can do that if you're winning perennially. Like, okay, people give the Patriots crap for Belichick's, sons are on the coaching staff. And it's like, okay, there's obviously a lot of nepotism here, but he's won 6 Super Bowl rings in New England. So it's like, all right, you put up with the nepotism because they won all the time. The Lakers, Jeannie Buss hasn't won crap.
Right.
So
they've won 1 in that 9-year period. I mean, before that, they did win 5 with Kobe and 5 with Magic. So it's been a pretty good run. I mean, you can make a case that since 1980, so over 40 years, they're the best organization in all basketball, of all sports.
They were well run then, and so okay, you're fine with the incestuousness if you're well run,
right?
And you're winning. But right now, it looks even ridiculous.
No, and the Clippers, who share the town with you in this arena, have had 11 straight winning seasons. I mean, they haven't gone to an NBA Finals, but they have gone to a conference finals in the last year, and they've been actually pretty consistent, and they're back in the play-in. And, I don't think a lot of teams want to play them. Well coached by Ty Lue, and you got Paul George back and playing really well. So it's a disaster with the Lakers, and I really have no idea how they get out of this other than, try to get lucky with some trades, contracts, whatever, and hope that LeBron and Anthony Davis are healthy and engaged next year, and maybe you make a final run at it.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine LeBron being able to play many more games than he did this year going forward. Like, why suddenly is he going to be able to play? I mean, listen, he's still a phenomenal player. You can't take that away from me. Like you said, he almost won the scoring title. And when he plays, he's incredibly effective and it looks like he hasn't lost much of a step. But he can't play 80 games. Like, you can't expect that. That's unreasonable. He is still a human. You can't expect the guy to play. I think you say, okay, let's try to get 65 out of him, best case scenario. And you have to hope that's what you get.
Yeah, and hope he's efficient and stays healthy so you can load manage him, and then the same thing with Anthony Davis. And again, next year he's going to break the scoring record. That's probably first on his mind at this point, and second on his mind is at some point play with his son, which would be in the 2024-2025 season. Right. See what happens.
All right, Sap. Well, let's transition over to the play-in tournament that you mentioned. The Lakers will not be participating, but we do have some fun teams participating, and it starts tonight at 7:00. Is the 7 versus 8 in the East. It's the Cavaliers and the Nets. And then at 9:30, it's the Clippers and the Timberwolves. That's also the 7-8. So just a refresher, if you don't remember, everybody, the way it works is 7 plays 8. The winner of that is the 7th seed. And so they play the 2 seed. That's how it goes. The loser then plays the winner of the 9-10 game in a 1-game elimination. Loser is out of the playoffs. Winner becomes the 8th seed and then plays the 1 seed. So Cavs and Nets tonight in the East, Clippers and Timberwolves in the West. And then tomorrow, Sap, we have the other play-in games, which are the 9-10, which are the Hornets and the Hawks in the East, and the Spurs and the Pelicans in the West. This got added in the bubble, was the first time the play-in tournament got added. It seems like it's becoming increasingly popular and going to just be a permanent fixture in the NBA. So first, let me ask you, Sep, how you feel about it, and then I guess we'll do our predictions.
I like it, again, because you keep a couple of other teams involved, like, say, San Antonio and New Orleans. One of those 2 teams will have to win 2 games to get into the playoffs, and they would be, of course, the 8th seed. So you have a couple of extra teams that are in this. It gives that suddenness to it. it gives the 6 teams in each conference that have already qualified for the playoffs maybe a week to rest up, get healthy, get your lineups straight, so they get that benefit and get that rewarded to them. And then you have these, close to one and done games. Obviously 9-10 is a one and done game because the loser's out and the winner still has to win another one to get in. But this should be interesting tonight because you got Brooklyn, which is the team no one wants to play because you got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving going against the Cleveland team, which played really well the first half of the year, but kind of faltered the second half. They don't have Jared Allen. They're a young team. Colin Sexton missed the entire year. You got Darius Garland, who's been in and out of the lineup towards the stretch. So you would think Brooklyn is going to win that matchup and become the 7th seed and then play your Boston Celtics. And again, Brooklyn is a scary team because you've got Kevin Durant, who can carry a team. Although when you really think of it, Jet, has he ever carried a team? I mean, he won 2 championships in Golden State, but he was part of a wagon, with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I mean, carrying a team to me is LeBron in 18, taking the Cavs to the finals.
No, not many players
Jeff
do it.
Green is his second
not many players.
No, I mean, so as great as Durant is, I mean, he still lost in the second round last year to Milwaukee. He was brilliant, but he still lost. And in Oklahoma City, made it to the finals once, blew a 3-1 lead in the conference finals in 16 to Golden State. So again, I always push back a little bit on Kevin Durant. I think he's one of the greatest players ever. I told you before, he's the greatest all-around scorer I've ever seen. But when people say he's the best player in the world, I push back. And when people say, oh, he's always carried teams far into the playoffs, I also push back on that because the facts show that he hasn't.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair criticism. And this year, it has been such a weird year for them. They started the year like gangbusters. They were like the top seed in the East. Then Durant got hurt. Obviously, we know what the Kyrie situation was, where he could only play in half the games. Then they went on, I think they had like an 11 or 12 game losing streak. They fell all the way behind. They sort of rallied. They played better recently. It's been a really weird year for them. But yeah, they have the star power of Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and that inherently makes a team scary. So I mean, we could talk about it once it gets decided. If it does get decided that the Celtics and the Nets play, we'll certainly break that series down and talk about it because there's a million storylines, and obviously the Nets are the one team that is seeded pretty lowly that has that kind of mega star power. So it is a unique scenario. So we'll have to see, but I think you make good points there. And Sap, as far as the play in itself goes, and I'm kind of curious in your thought here. I like it for the same reasons you said. It keeps teams engaged. It prevents tanking a little bit, and it keeps more fan bases engaged. The one problem I see with it is, and this is sort of, I think the first year, because we've only had it, this is the 3rd year, it's reared its head, is that it does open the possibility that a team really gets screwed. Like Minnesota,
sure,
it got screwed this year. Like they shouldn't have to deal with this. They finished 4 games ahead of the Clippers, 10 ahead of the Pelicans, and 12 ahead of the Spurs. Like they took care of their business this year, to the point where they were so far ahead of these other teams, it doesn't really seem fair. So I don't know how you could possibly do this, but doesn't it seem like almost there should be some sort of threshold for like where you avoid it, whether it's a win total or if it's amount of games ahead you finish? It's just like the Timberwolves are the clear outlier here. Where you're like, at 46 and 36, should they really have to deal with this whole play-in thing?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, because now they've got to beat a team that they're better than in the Clippers. But at least if they lose that game, they then have another chance to win when they play the winner of, if they lose that game, they would play the winner of San Antonio and New Orleans. But again, those teams were far behind Minnesota. So you had an 82 game schedule, and Minnesota has a better chance to make it because they only have to win 1 of 2 games, or those 2 have to win 2 of 2 games. So yeah, it's really not fair. I go a little bit deeper than that, Jeff. What I would do is, I don't know how much you could change the play-in tournament. What I would do is have a draft or a selection of the top 4 seeds to pick who their opponent would be, because now you would avoid the top 4 teams kind of playing around. I mean, Milwaukee laid down against Cleveland the final game of the season because they probably wanted to avoid the 2 seed so they wouldn't have to play Brooklyn, right? And the Celtics ended up being the 2 seed. So for that, you probably play Brooklyn rather than Chicago, which would be an easy opponent. So maybe in the future, you could look at it and say, okay, Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, those are the top 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference. Well, Miami gets their first choice of the other four teams, the 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed, and in all likelihood, they would pick probably Chicago, because Chicago looks like the weakest team out of the rest because they're just not playing well down the stretch. The Celtics then would have the next choice. They could pick Atlanta if Atlanta wins
So
in
you're
their
saying,
matchup. So
so
now
you're
they have
saying
a draft.
have the play-in tournament and then have a
Yep.
subsequent draft
Then
after
have a
the play-in
subsequent
tournament.
draft. Yeah. Pick your opponent. So, yeah. So the Celtics would have the second choice. So I would assume Miami would pick Chicago because Chicago's playing pretty poor. I would assume some teams would avoid Toronto because Toronto's playing really well. And then you've got the vaccination issue that
Right.
I believe Philadelphia and the Celtics may face. And fortunately for the Celtics, they're not playing Toronto, but Philadelphia's not going to have Matisse Thybulle for games 3, 4, and possibly game 6 if there is one because he can't get into Canada. So yeah, you have the first choice for Miami, and they'd go, okay, we got Chicago. Okay, Boston, you're on the clock. Okay, we'll take Atlanta because they ended up, sneaking
Right.
in, or Cleveland, or whoever it is. You get my point. And then after that, Milwaukee would say, well, we're all vaccinated, so we'll go to Toronto. And then Philadelphia has no choice. They're stuck with whoever's left, and that would be Brooklyn. That's just an idea. And I think it would build some tension heading into it too. Wouldn't it be like, you chose us, so we'll show
inherently
you.
creates drama for sure. It's a good idea, and it's interesting. I like it a lot. I think it would be really fascinating to do that. But the problem is it still doesn't address the conundrum with the team like the Timberwolves, who,
Right.
Again, 46 and 36 should be good enough to guarantee you a playoff spot. And I guess you could say, well, just win one of 2 games. Not that difficult, but okay, they're playing the Clippers, who are an 8 seed, and you think, all right, they should be able to beat the Clippers, but it's not the same Clippers team that it was for the most of the season.
No.
Now they have Paul George and Norman Powell back. And so, it inherently becomes a little bit more of a difficult game. So maybe, Sap, should it be the same where Minnesota gets to pick their opponent in the play-in tournament of the
Sure.
14 of the 3
Yeah,
teams?
absolutely.
Actually, we want to play San Antonio. We don't want to play the Clippers in this game.
Yeah, but the only problem with that is now, if San Antonio wins that, do they become the 7 seed? I mean, so
I don't. There's no right answer.
No. It's just in this particular year, the Timberwolves of all teams, who we both picked to make the playoffs, by the way, because we're both Karl Anthony Towns fans, and
Anthony Edwards. Yeah,
Anthony Edwards. We like that team, and I think they've performed really well this year, winning 46 games in the Western Conference. That's a pretty good accomplishment. Pat Beverly there, who gives them a little bit of an edge too.
Only time in franchise history they've made the playoffs without Kevin Garnett, if you can believe that.
That's amazing, isn't it? Oh my God.
Every
That's
other
crazy,
playoff
isn't
appearance had Kevin Garnett on the team. That's crazy.
It's kind of like Cleveland with LeBron, right? Like, this is the first time they've made the playoffs since the late 90s without LeBron.
That is crazy.
So Cleveland and Minnesota, totally irrelevant without those guys. Yeah, so I mean, you could do it all those different ways, but I like the idea of a draft where you pick your opponent, and then again, there'll be so much drama. So Phoenix would have the first choice in the West, and see how it knocks out. Maybe they decide and say, okay, we'll take Minnesota. We'd rather play Minnesota than the Clippers, and then
I think you should also have the option, Sap, to do like the NFL, defer. And then you're like, oh, you don't want to give any team clipboard material. We'll see who we get. We defer. And
right. Yeah. Let the second team pick, and we'll go next. Almost like Did the Minnesota Vikings miss their draft pick one year and they lost it?
Yeah, they lost. The clock ran out on
because they were too late coming to the table. The clock ran out, which is that's being really poorly run. You've got all this time to get ready for a draft, and you've got 15 minutes, and you don't know what to do.
Months to get ready.
Yeah, millions of dollars, big staff, and it's like, oh, the time ran out. I was like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah. So I like it. Overall, I like it more than I don't like it, Sap, but there's definitely some flaws to it.
Me too.
I understand why the Timberwolves and their fans could feel aggrieved, but hopefully tonight they just take care of business and win, and then they're the 7 seed, and they play the 2 seed Grizzlies, who, as great as the Grizzlies are, Timberwolves are capable of beating them. I don't think it's a Herculean task to beat the Grizzlies, but they certainly wouldn't be favored, but we'll see. So I think it'll be fun. Sap, in terms of, we'll end on our predictions tonight. I think we're both in agreement that it's going to be that Brooklyn is going to beat Cleveland in that 1 game runoff. So Brooklyn then will be the 7th seed. I will take Minnesota against the Clippers tonight and say that they will be the 7th seed in the West. Though I think that is a lot more a toss-up than the Eastern Conference game. because the Clippers are good and feisty as hell and really well coached. So
Yeah, that could be that's gonna feel like a football game, right? Minnesota and the Clippers, because you got Pat Beverly, who's going to be in the middle of everything, getting at it, and Ty Lue's an outstanding coach. He'll have his team ready. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Brooklyn becomes the 7 seed. I think ultimately Atlanta beats Charlotte and then beats Cleveland. Atlanta's playing great basketball right now, so I think Atlanta would be the 8 seed. And in the West, I'll say Minnesota's the 7 seed and the Clippers the 8 seed. I think they'll beat either San Antonio or New Orleans. That'll hold close to form.
yeah, I agree. San Antonio and New Orleans are, that's really a product of this play-in tournament being a thing.
Yep.
Like you look at the Eastern Conference, you go, oh yeah, Atlanta and Charlotte, both 43 and 39, up and coming young teams. Like, oh yeah, pretty impressive. They deserve a shot at this. Where as in the West, you look at the Pelicans, they were 36 and 46, and the Spurs were 34 and 48, and you're going, why the hell are these two teams involved in this?
Exactly.
So it's stark difference, and it's what a turnaround, Sap, between the two conferences. Where for years it was the West that was looking like the behemoth conference, and now it's the East that's just a far superior conference. I mean, East is going 10 deep, Sap. I mean that's pretty damn impressive. With teams over the 500 mark. So I will say Atlanta as well. I will take Cleveland against Atlanta in the 1-game playoff though. So I'll say it'll hold the form in the East. 7-8 will be Brooklyn and Cleveland. As far as the West, I think I agree with you. I think that the Clippers will, if they lose tonight, or if the Timberwolves lose tonight, they'll wax either New Orleans or San Antonio.
Yeah, they're better than them, so that should hold true to form.
So that's our predictions, and we'll see. And obviously, once all the matchups are set, we're gonna do a big playoff preview and stuff, and the playoffs begin in earnest on Saturday. So tons of stuff to talk about there, but that's our post-mortem on the Lakers. That's our little play-in tournament preview and assessments. And we're going to be back tomorrow with a new podcast with our end of season awards, wrapping all that up, giving our first team through third team all NBA, all the awards, and our thoughts on this 2021-2022 season. So you don't want to miss that. Thanks everybody for watching. If you want to watch the show on YouTube, it's youtube.com/JetStryer. If you want to find the show anywhere else and you don't know, just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, and you can find it anywhere podcasts are found, or right on your phone on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts. We are presented by Full Press Coverage, so thank you to them. And we will be back tomorrow with our end of the season awards show. See you, everybody.